Praise to Shakyamuni Buddha. To the founder, the endowed, transcending destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the founder, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the founder, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. When, O supreme amongst humans, you were born on this earth, you paced out 7 strides, then said, I am supreme in this world. To you who were wise then, I prostrate. With pure bodies formed supremely pure, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, flame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the best, Lord, to you I prostrate. With the supreme signs, face like spotless moon, color like gold, to you I prostrate. Dust free like you, the 3 worlds are not. Incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. The Saviour having great compassion, the Founder having all understanding, the field of merit with qualities like a vast ocean, to you the one gone to thusness I prostrate. The purity that frees one from attachment, the virtue that frees one from the lower realms, the one path, the sublime reality, to the Dharma that pacifies I prostrate. Those who are liberated and who also show the path to liberation, the holy field qualified with realizations, who are devoted to the moral precepts, to you the sublime community intending virtue I prostrate. Homage to the Supreme Buddha, homage to the Dharma refuge, homage to the great Sangha, to all 3 ever devout homage. To all worthy of respect, bowing with bodies as many as all realms atoms in all aspects, with supreme faith I pay homage. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind thoroughly, this is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a visual aberration, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew or a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud. See conditioned things as such. Through these merits may sentient beings attain the rank of all-seeing, subdue the foe of faults, and be delivered from samsara's ocean, perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. The Heart of the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra. I prostrate to the Arya Triple Gem. Thus did I hear at one time. The Bhagawan was dwelling on Matsavulcha's mountain in Rajagriha, together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagawan was absorbed in the concentration on the categories of phenomena called profound perfection. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom, and beheld those 5 aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Then through the power of Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara. How should any son of the lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? He said that, and the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Shariputra. Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly beholding those 5 aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness, without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. There is no I element and so on, up to and including no mind element, and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on, up to and including no aging and death, and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the end point of nirvana. The Buddhas who dwell in the three times also manifestly completely awaken to unsurpassable perfect complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequaled, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, should be known as the truth since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared. Tayata gate gate paragate parasangate bodhisoha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagawan arose from that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage, it is like that, it is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom just as you have indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagawan having thus spoken, the Venerable Sharadvatiputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, those surrounding in their entirety, along with the world of gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagawan. Offering the mandala. Sashi puke chukshe meta cham riva bling shin ni de gampadi sangye shing du mite uwagi troku nam dakshin la chupa shok jitsun la madam puke nam ki chuku kala kin se chin drigne jita tsampe du chesin mala sabye chuki chapa babju sok Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kam Niryatayami.
Sanje Jodhan Soji Shanama Chanjo Bada Dani Jasam Dagi Chujin Jive Sonam Ji Dola Benji Sanje Dobarash Sanje Jodhan Soji Shanama Chanjo Bada Dani Jasam Dagi Chujin Jive Sonam Ji Dola Benji Sanje Sanje Chedan Soji Chonam La Chanjo Bada Dani Gyasum Che Dagi Chujin Kiwe Sonam Dola Benje Sanje Do Barai Sho Kange Do Zenyu Zave Dala Danju Bangwa Yi Deme Jin Din Zewe Gudam Dela Chadze Lo Du Nyin Yin Jo Sun De Jebe La Shiji Senze Kanche Den De Gwa Chana Gama Den De Jato La So Du Zo Jin De Lun Du Sho Pan Den Zewe La Mara Moshi Dagi Jiguro Bemen Di Sho Na Gaden Shime Gone Jizan De Gudam Du Yung Du De De Se Hadami Dami Yombo Chi Radami Na Chi Mora Tizan Tambe Jun Yen 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 La Yukada Dami Jun De Tumbo Gada Ruwa Gunye Tamje Ge Daji Chudan Dos Dang Du Gulong Gom Gyabshu Asra Gulong Yago Chi Ane Da Chu Nyaya De Shen Bengi Shen La Pendo Chia Chi Jik Samba Sambu Yung Yak Chi Di Dang Ruwa Samba Sambu Saya Di Namju Ki Sherab Gugudo Sim Miliya Pendo Chia La Namju Sherab Mena Ni Susu Sansan La Pendo Ya Di Ne Je Rugudo Chidan Di Chi Di Ni Da Chu Tuya Di Sherab Yak Peri Sherab Peri Dang Sherab Yago Di 미신 la pendo yung chi chitu chi gi de chi de nga ani jinda de ni gi samje ku long
So we're going to start with a motivation meditation. So the motivation you should have is to listen to these teachings in order to benefit others, to have this good-hearted motivation. But in order to develop this good-hearted motivation, you need like a relative wisdom, like recognizing the way things are, recognizing the kindness of others and so forth. And based on that understanding, then you can develop this pure attitude wishing to benefit others. So this is the motivation we should generate.
Jawram jinzene sungju shu yore chezang gyawa sangpo shivji yin chen tuzu zhuwa ta tuzu di yawa shivjirwa dile nga zile na jawram jin chega mara ta dile chi zile na jawram jin chega mara sungju ta tingsan sungju shira nangdu mandwa ta chezang nga zo tuzu zhuwa di kundu sungju shuya tuzu ta kan le dere chezang dile che jigne de nine ta di tepdi tanda ta kundu ge sungju ngone dire ta janzo kundu sungju chira ragmendo something sang sembo phang mare sungju ta ngone de sungju ngone dire ta dire ta dinde mango yoro tiring anzo thya de da jawar jeng ma sung shan jo chu dikshan jo da de thanda chu du su shan jo oda de tingdu dan tumbe gone inde yong da ju chung de da gyawa samgo shujire sha sam dinde samno gyumzen dinde samdana gyumzen de to ge ne semna la gawa jikri gawa di kejumba shoujiri senla gawa dang lobjon tila tona mena shingi marwa senla gawa dang tona yuna lobjon chiya la kange yo mare susus lobjon shenya le pendo yore lame chinlap simla chugiya le pendo yore kejumba res gyumzen samdang kejumba res
So now we should rejoice in this opportunity we have. But again, if you want to really genuinely rejoice or feel joy, it should be based on, again, reasoning, feeling how fortunate we are. Many of us, many people here who listen to this have had the fortune to hear the Dalai Lama's teachings, had the fortune to maybe meet the Dalai Lama. And this is an incredible opportunity. I mean, many people and certainly many beings haven't had this opportunity to see the Dalai Lama or receive teachings from him. and also many other teachings you may have received from various teachers. This is incredibly fortunate and very rare. And also to be able to study this text. This is like genuine teachings. It's not something that you should do as an intellectual exercise and then just forget about it. These are the real teachings. I mean, this book was put together at the request of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So we're incredibly fortunate to be able to have this opportunity to study it. So this joy that you generate should be based on reasoning, right? If you really think and reflect, study, think and reflect, then it's good, and you'll be able to generate this joy. But without this reasoning, it's difficult to be able to generate it genuinely. However, if you are able to generate this joyous mind, then everything you do in terms of the Dharma becomes much easier. Study and meditation becomes a lot easier and, in fact, joyful.
Breathing exercise
So we'll do a breathing exercise 10 times first, and then we'll listen to the teachings.
다 기생한서 온봉하다 대응아 수라고 다 주시에 수주로 내가 치익수가 낭수가 수다 뒤로 렉자디 치익수가래 낭수라 미고 온봉나 뭐죠 물류용 온봉아도 될라 온봉나 온봉아 치 수다리로가 될라야 치 될라 수다디 숙주리로 숙주조사라다
So, up until now, recently we've been talking about the 5 sense objects and the 5 sense faculties. So when we look at these 5 external forms and 5 internal forms. So the 5 external forms are the objects of the eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, and tactile consciousness. And then the internal forms are the sense faculties, or sometimes said to be sense powers themselves. So the eye sense power, the eye sense faculty, the ear sense faculty, nose sense faculty, tongue sense faculty, and body sense faculty. So this totals 10 different types of forms that we've looked at. So there's many different ways to divide form, but one way that you can divide it is you can divide it into the objects of the sense faculties, and then the mental objects of the 5 sense faculties, and then the objects of the mental sense faculty, right? So this two. So there's those objects which are perceived by the five ordinary sense faculties, and then the objects that are perceived only by the mental consciousness.
다오나 추기지 수스나 칼라고레를 되다데 추기지 수고 오샤도와 테나 저와 이시 코나라 낭신 때다 체주래 당보데 체주니 추기지 수를 체주니 테나즈다 이시 코나라 나야디 이시 코나라 낭로와 원시만나시 아니 옹복하면 바스로 체주니 이시 코나라 나와 간식라 옹복하면 마인베 수스롱와디 추기지 수고 오인스 어디 야고 샤도와데 체주
Yeah. So when we look now at this mental sense faculty, the first is the meaning, or it's the definition here. It's in midway of page 119. When it says that which is capable of materiality that appears to the mental consciousness alone, but is not a supportive sense element. So within this, there's two aspects. So the first one being the form which appears to the mental consciousness alone. And then the second one is the aspect is that it's not supported by the sense elements.
다디 셰고에 균젠디데 올마 셰고르도 세고셰고쇼다데 이시 코나 셰바데로와 이시 코나라데 제주 당복에 이시 코나라들라고 해야 돼. 공회시집에 유인받죠. 그래서 이시 코나라서 어디 빼나 다 이제 숙다 디즈파제로 거를 미 공회시와서도 공회시와 공화서도 미공 문화문화 제물을 용보 나야게 숙다 뒤로 렉자여와 어두조 파제래 두조 이시 코나서 어디 공회시와 주레스 제주 당보데레스 제레스.
So there's a reason why these two aspects of the definition is there. So the first one, that it appears only to the mind, only to the mental consciousness. This eliminates objects that appear to what is said to be the five doors, which is the five sense perceptions of the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, and the tactile, or the body. So it eliminates those. The first aspect of the definition eliminates those objects that are perceived by the five other sense perceptions.
이 코나스티지 다 옹부 카마인 바스 제주니버디 옹부 카마인 발라고 가르잖아 나 미고 옹부 나오면 제 옹부 류지 옹부 두zo 상마 옹부 타모 두zo 이시 코나가 유드 줘래 이시 코나를 나오래와 이시 코나를 나오래들레 이나라 아니 난다 추기지 소디 다 옹부 카마인 발라고 해야 돼 제가 미고 옹부 카마인 발라야 되게 옹부디 제디 제래 옹부디 제디 이시 코나를 나오래들레 또 옹부 카마인 발라야 말고 옹부 카레데라 옹부 카 인자 아니 마인 발라디 제투 매 인자 아니 옹부 칸디 추기지 수마레즈 다디 제시디 옹부 카마인 바스 체주니와디 어디 셰레스데.
So then the second reason says, the second part, of the definition says that it is not a supportive sense element. Now this sense element is a sense faculty or a sense power, so wangpo in Tibetan. So what's meant here? Well, this needs to be stated because, for example, the five sense powers or five sense faculties, the eye sense faculty, ear sense faculty, nose sense faculty, tongue sense faculty, and tactile sense faculties, these are only perceivable by mind, right? Yet they're not said to be mental object form. So this last bit, even though these are only perceivable by the mental consciousness, it then eliminates those from the mental object forms, these five sense powers or sense faculties.
제나 내라다데 추기지가 수기인바 20코나라 낭싱세 다데래 아니 20코나라 낭싱 아니 옹복카마인바 시고레스 제단다데 ton다시 시디네 로비잉니게 남셰리고나다 쿵셰쿵 이기유라니 추기지시 중화데 데니 이코네 유민싱 유코나 유 때마이노 시숭바타로스타디 쿵디셰레 로비잉니게 남셰리고나라야 아니 이기 유라 니 최기지 송아래서 딜라야 아니 이 코네 유인신사 제주 당고지 유코네 인지 때 많이 봐서 때 홍보 수전 당화되게 많이 봐서 어디래가 어디나라 슝딜 콩도제 어두세네 레소다
So this brings us to this definition: that which is capable of materiality, meaning that it's form, and that appears to the mental consciousness alone, but is not a supportive sense element, or you could say sense power or sense faculty. So how did this definition come about? Well, if we look down the page a bit where it says in Vasubandhu's rational system of exposition, he gives the scriptural explanation for how this came about. It is within the objects of mind that what is called mental object form is found. Such a thing is an object of mental cognition alone, and that is only an object and not a supportive basis. So this is the scriptural reference that supports or from which that definition is derived.
다들로위니 달로면 통매기 아니 최제제 수들라 마셰레스와 나디 가레나를 셰레스나 아니 곰복군주나를 셰레스 다디 간데레라나 최제제 수 간시나 델라나방아다디스 아니 당보디 두발레주베수 곰복가위베수 양다발람몰레 중에서 군다보다 옹부 완제베수 시제네 수들라야다 예왕아 셰레스와
So if we then go on to look at what Asanga says about the mental form objects, he states there's 5 types. This is based on what he said in the Compendium Abhidharma. When he states, what is mental object form? It should be viewed in terms of 5 types. Form emerging from a process of deconstruction, form of open space, form of vows derived through a rite, form that is imagined, and form arising from meditative expertise. So this is the top of page 120, where it talks about these 5 types of mental object form.
다 당보디 니 두발레기베 수세데 가레스나 아니 두발레기베 수네서와 수라고 시발레주 중화사 이지 셔월나면 뒤타라베 세단데 세우도 대양 라고 수라 차수서 체베체 아니 타와 타르주와 이 20콘의 유디주베 뒤타라지죠 네 뒤베 공부 이지 세베 차단 샤르체월레 수그 충다르주와나 두발레기베 수시 세다데난 디셰세보
So the next part of the paragraph goes on to explain what's the meaning of the first one, form emerging from the process of deconstruction. So basically what this is that as you take a gross object, physical object, and you break it down into smaller parts, or you deconstruct it to smaller parts until you get to the point where these subtle particles are only perceived by the mental consciousness or mental cognition, as it states here. So I'll just quickly read it out. Of these, form emerging from a process of deconstruction refers to subtle particles that emerge from the process of mental deconstructing coarse material forms, which can be perceived by the mental cognition alone. Thus, when a coarse everyday object is examined and reduced to its constituent parts, it becomes progressively smaller, ultimately resulting in a form of a subtle particle that can only be an object of mental cognition.
다들 난 이와디 곰바까비고 숙세들와 이시 코나라 아니 파르지 나와 짜싱고 나왔다베 땅저 저장디 디 용거래 미시게 파르고 숙 통화라 네바고 파르지 나와 짜싱어디 진곰바까비고 숙수저장서 갑들이 이시 코나라 아니 파르지 나와서 짜싱어디 미실라 나와 파르지 나와 짜싱어디야 아니 숙이 제제레스와 수기제제레 데 미실라 나와데 수기제제레스 네 이실 나와데 추기제레스다 이일 나와데 그 미글라 도스데 파나라 나와 캬당은 제어와 데 미실 수제르와 수기제나 도레스 다 이시 코나라 나와데 이시다 다데 먼저 키시 곰자는 저런서 옥중고 곰망고 자데 남도 상마파 가서질라 동상로지 나와지 샤용고도 카실라 셔기도 어디르데 다디 곰 잡나 용거리다 gom jamna yongre ta di odire ta di ngomba kabyu suksa dire cheda.
So then when we look at the next one, which is the form of an open space, this refers, for example, to a vacuum space that appears as a whitish vacuity to a mental consciousness alone. In general, although the whitish vacuity of a vacant space that is essential for the eye consciousness to perceive a distant mountain is posited as the form of open space. Here, what is being referred to is the mental object form specifically. So, as it said there, we basically can have two types of this space, or this space. One that is appearing to the eye consciousness, so the space between objects and so forth. However, there's a second type which appears only to the mind, mental consciousness. So that space which appears to the eye consciousness, this is physical form, not the object, the form that is the object of the eye consciousness. So separate from that, there's a spaciousness that can be appearing to the mind, and this comes about through meditation. So for example, if you've been doing breathing meditation and you've become very focused on the breath to the point where your thoughts settle, at this point you can get an experience which is sometimes described as tongtsam, which is like mere empty, or a very kind of vacuous experience, very spacious or vacuous experience. It would be an example of this second type of form, the form of open space. So this generally comes about through meditation practice.
Di yanzu di norgirda kashi, yanzu mik tuzma zumdi, ne, bena tepdi tanda tongu yorwa, tanda tongu da, mik zumdi tepsi nawa shagda simnala, di marada di, tangi di, tanda tep dugus che, mik tongu da, mik zumdi simnala shaya tepsi dowa, di nangzui di mara, di tokbar nangor di. Di dogbal na nangzu di nawa de mares ta nawa khare la de musumji kona yi ji musum tel nang yor da chena yi ji musum tel ta di gomjab na ha go me gom majam na ha go mar da di.
So just to make a distinction, if for example you were looking at this book and looked at it for a while, when you close your eyes, the book could appear to your, as an image in your mind. However, this appearance is not said to be this yigi right. So this is not what we're talking about here when we talk about mental object form. This is something that, this type of mental object form. This is something that is like conceptual. It's a generic image, or it's a conception. This is not something that perceived directly by the mind. So this kind of experience of something, this kind of spaciousness is perceived through understanding, through meditating. So you need to really have some meditation experience to understand this.
양탁 발랑 바스니다 고전시나 소다고 동바당 저정한서 캔로브즈네 랭고로 찬주심베 동바당 나고 동바당 게니고 동바당 다 소다고 동바데 데 중고라나라 세워요 소다고 동바데 아니 양탁 발랑 발레 중 동바사 속스도 두저레
디 동바상마 디 주그레 or 디
동바상마 수그레 나나나.
Okay, so when we talk about the next one, form of vows derived through a rite. This is, for example, when we take vows such as the Bodhisattva vows, Tantric vows, lay vows, or individual liberation vows such as the monks' vows. All these vows are said to be this type of mental object form.
Number rig suks and number rig tang rig maimbe suks labda dinana. Yanda balamba de suni number rigje maimbe suks number rigje maimbe suks so that dombadi 소다 넘버 깨직 당보디 넘버 리직 소래. 대 원식 통고여와. 디 제가 소다 넘버 깨직 당보디 미시 통고여.
믹쉐기 통고여.
통고여. 미딜로 넘버 토대와 통고여. 다 디깨직 니원에 미시 통고여 말해. 다 이시 권나라 낭로여. 와제다 넘버 리제 많이 배서 우사.
Okay.
통야요 말해. 토야요 말해.
No. So when we talk about this form that's derived from taking the vows, there's two types. So there's a indicative and non-indicative, which basically means perceivable and non-perceivable. Now, when we talk about perceivable, we're talking about referring to perceived, in this case, by the eye consciousness. So it said that the first moment of taking a vow, this is a indicative form, which means it can be perceived by the eye consciousness. So it said the first moment of taking this vow is perceivable by the eye consciousness, but the second moment becomes non-indicative form. And at this point, it's only perceivable by the mental consciousness. So this type of form is what's referred to as unseen and also unimpeding.
Dombe duwa tangsa, domba mayimba tangsa, parme duwe number je mayimbe suslabda. That's dawe domba di diswa. Ta domba mayimba di nganzo dinde yore kondo sagdo kondo merwa. Miji kondo sana. Kondo sadi nganzo midi kondo sago 통구다. 그래. nganzo midi kondo sago 통구다. midi 동마워차 밍마워차. 아니 게 다게 하고 게 다르와 게 다르 지기도 아티디 미디 개개 말라나나 다뭐 컨도사이샤 땅 아섭서 제거를 하고도 미기 통고도 티케직 당보디 넘버 지기 소래 티케직 니번에 아니야 넘버 제 많이 배숙차도 그래 제가 데 동바 많이 배숙 사들다 넘버 제 많이 배숙 동바 많이 배숙 그 동바 말아봐 콘도 다 콘도를 이러다 데 어두스레 다래 단다 두시안나 베진 되겠어.
So within this in this type of indicative and non-indicative form, this non-indicative form, then there's two types. There's that which is vows and that which is not related to vows. So for example, what we've talked about, the first one is related to the vows. The second one is something like anger. So anger, you can see when somebody's angry. It changes their physical color, their physical perception. You can sometimes see physical reaction, but also sometimes you can simply perceive that they're angry. Like if they speak, the sound's different. And even if they're not speaking, you can sort of see that they're angry. And you have to be careful around them. So we can say this is in the same sense. So the first moment of this is again this indicative form. And then the subsequent moment is this non-indicative form for this anger.
Yeah. parme number jiwla parma saade parma rabjung saade parma rabjung na nganzo rabjung ma do che kaza gelon dan gizu ma do che je tawa che sa di go domba sto tela parme ge oso parma rabjung bena tasha ro chimbe ta bang rabjung ta le ani domba jum den de ge jesu du yin se tela kelen sum yore ta de domba tela parma soro parme ge wasen da parme diwe ge wader ya 계직 당보디 다타 그러 다타도 코로나 매 초와다 지금 룰라 지금 리그요 레드 하 계직 이번에 넘버 좀 많이 배수샤로 될 파르메 디베 넘버 좀 많이 배수샤 될 파르말라 샤다데
근데 디파마스 디 트래쉬 디솜
랍중 랍드 중에 또 말해 파르마 랍중 것도 봐서 랍중 것도 봐
파마 랍중 디 통거
파마 랍중스나 가서나 타와 짜샤 랍중 돌람세기도 안데도 타제공 콜 켈린스미요레 김베타봉 아니 랍중가 따랑바 아니 샤제게베지스 통화스 케주숨 김바게 둘로 마고야 domba jumdende rabjung thulu khoya ane domba jumdende ge jesu thangi is Kelen sumyore.
Right.
Kelen sum ki domba dilla parma rabjung ki domba.
Ala yina din domba nane lebmasono. Right.
Domba khare domba ngane.
Di kelong ki
Soda
domba.
domba yomar dilla.
Right.
Kelong phashane dilla genye domba yomar.
Right. So we can also talk about said to be in between, literally in between vows, right? So this can be in a moment before, so for example, prior to taking the monk's vows. So for example, there's three things here that you have the haircut.
Marma tasha di marda tasha gurwa. Rabchon tiene 당보디 자제 관해야 돼. 룰라 자제 관해야 돼. 이바디 침배 둘로 막 관해야 돼. 침바가 둘로. 침바하고라. 미자가 둘로 막 관해야 돼. 이차송아. 숨바디 아니 데레 가자. 도마 좀 된데 제스 당기 스케일해야 돼.
아니 탐바디
둘로데 랍도 주면 랍중가 따라는 바지. 따 둘로지고 말에 따 타야당.
Okay.
그 망고지 열어. 랍도 주면 따랑 바지. 침배 따 뽕.
Sorry. So yeah, I've made a mistake with the first one. There's three aspects. The first is not only cutting the hair, but taking the aspects of the monk. So it's cutting the hair, taking the monk's robes, and so forth, taking the aspect of the monk, but haven't received the vows at this point. The second part is to abandon like the lay aspect, so abandoning layperson's clothes and like that. And then the third one is this commitment to follow the Buddha, right? So this is these when these three aspects are present, one is said to be in between vows. So you've abandoned the lay vows, but you're in between taking the monk's vows. And again, in the same way, this in between vows is said. The first moment of that is said to be indicative form, and then the second moment is said to be non-indicative form.
Tedagisa rankunye lomesa gulon shinji luyu di rigbar mi chebes number je mayin ba shi chasa di mishinda mi thontu go marwa gejing yone soso tabe domba de lomen ge thungne choge ya nang ba lang ba la na yang ta ba lang ba la ta zo de ani yang ta ba lang ba la sa ba na soda ge domba de ni lomen ge thunne len go yun zang an de domba de la ta ming do su de la yang ta ba lang ba la ming ta go gyumzen de de res Yana yang thaba langba le chungwa sok ki sukshi ki dajo go ba song dadi yang thaba langba sa wa ki gyumzin shere.
So when we talk, we're going through the text here. So when we talk about forms of vows derived from a rite, refers, for example, to non-indicative forms. Such non-indicative forms include forms derived from taking the pratimoksha vows, negative commitments, and the interim precepts, which is what we talked about. When I said the in-between vows, it's said to be interim precepts. It's translated here. They're called non-indicative form, in that they do not reveal the person's intention. That is what motivated them to the mind of others. The pratimoksha vows, for instance, are received through the rite of the presence of a preceptor. And again, the first moment of receiving these vows is said to be indicative form, and then the subsequent moments are said to be non-indicative form. From that angle, they are described as a form derived from a rite. Alternatively, this term should be applied to such form that is derived through a rite, and so on.
다드네 시와 군다베 숙사도가 군다베 숙사가 그래서나 아니 먼저 미도바 공배 아니 이제라 사시근루게 정도 다도 미도바 공배 띵이지 생각도 그 생각만 셰임바 류템반냐 샤공 류딜라네 제 샤단 박바단 주와다 도스 파메와 상단 아니如果 긴르지고 라 상단 담보 긴르 찍래 미 긴르 찍이니 니기 시시게 주니시 야동세네 사시코랑 긴르기 차바던데 그럼 여기 띵인지 여러와 어디 아니 군다고 송래 데 이기 셰발라 나와 저 페나 밀람나랑 저 다다 랑고체다 강바다 된데도 어디 밀람 거라나 이기 유이들 나한테 요지레메시 그 퇴응을 내가 여마를 대나시 사시근르게 차워서 띵이진 거라는 걸로 봐 나와샤된 적 수지레메시 지금 수문에게 사시근르 잡아야 여마와 어디 군다고 소스라고 해서
So then it goes on to talk about the fourth one.
네.
Yeah, fourth one, which is imagined forms. And this refers to that which is perceived, for example, skeletons that are perceived during a concentration meditation. So in this type of meditation, what you could do is dissolve your physical body away until, like your flesh and skin and flesh and so forth, until only a skeleton remains on a mental level, obviously. And then this can expand it out until, on the mental perception, the entire space is filled with skeletons. So this is said to be a mental appearance, in the same way that in a dream we might perceive a house and a car and whatever physical, whatever perceptions we perceive in a dream. Of course, these aren't really there. And in the same way, when you're doing this concentration meditation, the space isn't literally filled with skeletons, but it's merely a perception due to your concentration.
당아와디 완저베 숙사들 완저베 숙사데 세와 메단 추딩이 진서로 다 세와 메단 추딩이 진서죠 다 시내고 다 시내 다디 시내 인지미지 토고에서 말해 딩인진 배떡 쳐고 차연들의 연구에서요 세와 메단 추딩이 소 아니 베디 딩인진 또 매베디 도비온데 매바로 해야 되는데 아니 추면서 추용해야 되는데 추가야로 저만의 연구에서라 이 띵이지 심라 띵이지 원톰네 심라 배 누가 전부 차네 근데 연구여로 그래서 대야 띵이지 원톰에 도지 매단 추 켜봤다 매단 추 속수 그룹에 속이 매서 아 띵이지 또게 아니 추면서라야 추든데 차로야 매매서를 매차로야 되는데 연구로 아디 제디 니 방법용서 때 띵이진 또 중앙 인상 안데라 완전히 속스전제 라고 요레스와
So then the next one, which is form arising from meditative expertise, which is the fifth one. This is when one has come abiding, but not necessarily full come abiding, but a strong concentration. When one has this powerful concentration, then various things can appear, such as fire and water and so forth, due to the power of the concentration. So if one had this strong concentration, was meditating and meditated on water, or kind of had this concentration on water, then the appearance of water would arise. And likewise, if one did this meditation on fire, then the appearance of fire would arise. So this is based on having this strong concentration, these mental form objects such as fire and water and so forth can appear.
다디 ngombakundu shungdi 추타래 다단데디 요바디 마디실 잡티간라 ngombakundu 손데 가르스나 슝데 가르스나 ngomba 다 되벌레시면서 ngom바 되버지니 뒤타랍 수소 아니 ngom바 세버지니 디니 딜레 셴베에서 통마메베 릭제된데 양다발람베 순네 넘버 릭제 마이베 수소 용스 따고네 순니게 수소 언제베 순네 넘버 타와다 삼디기 주기 수카임바 오스요 다디추 슝디 수 쿵타레로.
So if we look into it now, where does this, again, where do these five come from? The quote is in, or another explanation of the five, I should say, it's in the elucidation of the Compendium of Abhidhamma, where it states, form emerging from a process of deconstruction refers to material forms like subtle particles. Open space refers to space that represents the absence of obstructive contact. Those derived from right refers to non-indicative forms. Those that are imagined refers to mental image forms. That which emerges from meditative expertise refers to any form that is the dominion of experience of a meditative absorption aimed at liberation.
대다로스다 당연히 해야 돼. 대다로 단다 이시유는 낭예디 동매샤오르무지. 또바샤는 디그 말해야 돼. 대다 추지지 송하고 이시 코나라 나시베 이지시바니 이지시바디 또바샤요 말해. 동매 이시를 샤오르스. 동매샤오르스. 또바 이시를 나와에 찬이 딱바 임베 추지지 수수 조가워스. 또바 이시를 나와디 추지 수글 샤도 말해서는 또바 이시를 나와디 딱바로 하고 튼지로 하고 어디 인자 수글 샤도 말.
그래?
똑발라 나와져라. 똑발라 나와디 딱 봐봐.
Pene tonchiro.
전지로 전지래 전지 다오 말에 전지래 돼.
Tonchire, okay. Yeah.
얘들은 세부도 아니 말로.
So looking on, when it says thus, the mental cognition referred to in the context of the phrase, it is to mental cognition alone that the 5 types of mental object form appear, should be understood as being non-conceptual mental consciousness. So this non-conceptual mental consciousness means that it's not conceptual, of course, but this also means that it's unimpeding. So it doesn't impede like physical matter would. Given that the appearing object of the conceptual mind is permanent, it would be difficult to posit it as mental object form. So what we're referring to here is the generic images. They're said to be permanent. So because being permanent, they cannot be posited as mental object form because, they're not form.
지난 대신 그래. 다들 빼면서 편도 침몰이시 지면 지난zo 다 우중 고모야고 자. 아니 남도도 봐가 아니 셈세리기 차디 하거나 셈세리기 차 하고 니도 수레와 야다고라 다디 똑발로 나와도 샤나 다 딩마송아 제가 셈세리기 차 나니데 세리기 차세 당보 셈기 세리기 마차고 건데 왜 그런 신샤고라 왜디 속으로 받아 저는 대낭이게 소리 다 동매 세월에 다디 동매 세월에 컨데 샤고 이메들 상당하고 당하고 저는 디 지메다 곰 잡는 거네 저랑도 곰이하고 잡내지나 단대기 빼저디 직디 펜도 빼셔 뭐요 그래서 곰 맞잖아 다 펜도 된대래 아니 단다대 대신은 펜도 말했으라시라 곰 잡내지나 디 빼미시 펜도 좀 버렸어
근데 디 셀싱릭바 디 수토그레 칸딜
세시릭바 셰와데 마시공데 월레브로 왜 세베 남도 파가르데 대신이디 수리메 다 하고 그러 디데나나던다 동메 셰와레 세부셰도 디던다 곰 자니 냠렘바 똑고 냠렘베 첨보데서 디 하고 그요 말 망고제게 디 딩에다 다제간라 년대로도 미케다 첨보된데 디세 찬다 제거도 디간 냐냐디 디갈로 망고 닝이요 당에도 단도 민주로 뭐진다 건도 닝도 건도 그 디세 망고 제고도 디가둘라 가고도 디가둘라 디세 가고 시다래 딩산 다제간라 년에도 저랑서 간에 깔래 가고 올레스나나 점자자로
So when you're talking about this, it's very useful to know this. For example, like when you're doing meditation and you focus on the breath, for example, and to the point where the thoughts subside, like you cut these thoughts, and the clearer knowing aspect of the mind starts to appear, then understanding who is perceiving that it's actually very difficult. So we have like this light or something like that. That can be said to be form, that appearance. But this and said to be non-conceptual. But when you're looking at understanding who is perceiving that or what or who is perceiving that, that's actually very difficult to understand, even for like people who've been meditating for a long time. Konda di mingaram di mambo sungso.
Dadi sha jurumari sha. Tik te zre masan. Jurumari sha. Okay. 어디 다디 펜도 첨부 요래 디시에는 지면 곰게도 펜도 첨부 요래 라는디.
So it's very important, therefore, to understand this meaning. It's actually very helpful in the
benefit in your do meditation time. You have benefited this understanding. Oh, this text says now I have this experience, and you recognize it. You learning this is the Papa, and you remember, and you have experience coming your meditation. And you recognize this mind. Oh, text said this one. As this very, very, very good to give clear message. 어디제 다들라 지른건지 낭배 캐원난지 다디 옹부 속디에디 숭화도 셔셔 다들라 낭배게 중수수기 에네 두주 칸데 미디 시기도 아초기지수 지르나 다들 세보다 지를 뭐미지서 남배 개원남지 최제지 소시 재원 20권의 주의의 교회 소시를 저 레치단다 튠버레스 최제지 소이나 20권의 주의 소이 베파 차버레스 왜냐 텔라 낭세기 마종미당 여왕아 샤자문들라 ngāwō tēndā jiāng sūksīngi wā yīmēn sā lā tūmīdiñ yōrēs. Pēnā, chirāma yō lūg lā chū jī sūshī chāwa nāmbar jī māyī bē sūk lē shīn shē yō mā rē. Chirāma yō lūg lā, nāmbar jī māyī bē sūk dī mī shī chū jī sūk lē shindā dīndē jī guṇdā bē sūk sē yā rō dā ngōmbā kāp yō sūk sā rā yāndā bā lāmbā lā sūk sē tū tū dhānyē tū yō mā rēs. Chirāma yō lūg lā nāmbar jī māyī bē sūk dī mī shī yō mā rēs yā rē.
So, as it goes on to explain in the text, there's an agreement on what the meaning of this mental object form is, that it appears only to the mind and is not sorry, it says it here, must be understood in terms of form that is the object of mental cognition alone. So therefore it appears only to the mind. It is this said, there is a divergence of opinion on whether it should be further differentiated into 5 types and also whether all 5 are material form or not. For example, in the Vaibhashika system, apart from non-indicative form, no other mental object of form is mentioned. So apart from this non-indicative form that we talked about before, the other types of mental object form that are presented, they don't hold to this in their view. The Chiramawara in the Vaibhashika or the Great Exposition system.
Number Jema be suk pungbola chukchik di shewe chukchik number Jema be sule shembe chu giji sukchi ma she do sa modere.
So as this is further explained when we look at the quote from the Treasury of Knowledge, it says form is the 5 sense faculties, the 5 reference fields, and non-indicative form alone. So what's meant by this? It says here there's 11 types of form. 11 types of form. So there's the 5 objects of the 5 sense consciousnesses, and then there's the 5 sense faculties themselves, making 10. On top of that, there's 1 type of mental object form, which is non-indicative form. So other than that, there's no other type that's mentioned.
Aduwe ombong e yu mayin be chere lo shik du ten do sta number je mayin be su de ade shebe kung she gore ni gi dang yin sun ten be number je mayin ba kone she ten be chu je je du be su do de wa so je kun da bo number je chawe chero os la do de ma lo shen dir.
So it goes on to say, I'll just read this quote, the same is found in investigating the characteristics. Since non-indicative form belongs to mental objects, it is not included among the 5 sensory objects. So is presented separately the term alone in terms of emphasis, indicating that it is a non-indicative form alone that is mental object form. The significance of this is to preclude other types of mental object form postulated by the Saltantrikas and others.
She chu giji su la number je ma be su kone she te dara lo yin ye rang ge do de we lu zu rang de ko wa tar number je ma be su de su chin wa mi she wa na sa su chin ma res number je ma do de we lo la ane number je ma su de su chin wa ma res be na zo rang de le do de wa nam na res de su me de number je ma be su de ze yo ma res ke la ne mi che wa zam yin de che ko ba number je ma su de Dombaya Kelane, anything I saw Jigime, I do Shigime say. I didn't jika shall them Jeremish Jigi, any the Maris, David Juanchimonala, Dene Tobish. David Juana Dene, Copa Tasha and Yoshres, Tedajan, running over maybe Chile, Sugitini maybe Chidan, she says, Chiramo Nare, Yodo, she says. Chidarshivana, Oreta, Dode Velula, any number Jemai Sumares, that share. Lula number Jimmy su the su race like that on that 전화를 세우도 하지.
So there's some disagreement on whether this non-indicative form is in fact form, and it goes on to explain this in the text. Thus, this text explains that mental object form is constituted only of non-indicative form. Even so, according to the Sautantrika position presented by Vasubandhu himself in his auto-commentary, it appears that even this non-indicative form is not accepted as constituting material form. The auto-commentary states, Sautantrikas assert that this non-indicative form does not have substantial reality, which basically means it doesn't have a substance, because it lacks any function after the vows are received. So this is meant after you take the vow, after you make this commitment saying, I will not kill, I will not steal, and so forth, then it doesn't function beyond that point. It is imputed as well in dependence on the great elements that belong to the past. They lack any essential nature and lack the characteristics of material form. Vaibhashikas say non-indicative form has substantial reality. However, how is this known? The Treasury states, scriptures declare three types of form, stainless form, increase, and the path not committed, and so on. So this, according to the Sutra school, then non-indicative form is not form. But according to the Great Exposition school, this non-indicative form is in fact material form. So there's a disagreement here between those two schools.
미시유를 땡대요와 네 턱받아 지어로 땡요 토제가 수식되레스 수만자 되는 것도 수라고도 미시 땡요 토제스 미시유를 땡대요와 턱받아 지어 턱받아서데 수디도살을 코도서고마다 직직가되고 직코살을 직가되고도 어두저래다
저디 담보디 맹
땡요 토제가 수사
땡요 턱제가
땡요 턱제가
땡요
미시유를 땡대요와 아니 턱받아 지어
plus. Okay. So then when we talk about these, according to the Great Exposition School, these three types of forms. So here it said stainless form, increase, and path not committed. However, it could be clearly said that the first type of form is said to be that which has a basis and is impeding. So basically, it's something that's perceivable, for example, to the eye consciousness, and also is impeding. So it blocks other material passing through it. This is the first type of form. So it has a base, and it's impeding.
So 니와데 가래서나 미실라 통하여 버체 토야 민교. 배나 램보드들다. 램보드도 미시 통도다고. 내가 토야 민다고 어디.
So tenyu togme.
Tenyu.
So then the second type is that which has a base but is non-impeding. So this would be a form that you could see with your eye consciousness. However, it's not physically impeding, like a rainbow or something like that. This is having a basis but not impeding.
다들 숙숨바디 때문에 통매 미실라 땡야요 말에 토야요 말에 다 돈바래 넘버를 제마인베 숙세야 되겠다.
So then the third type would be that which doesn't have a basis and is also non-impeding. So this would be like this non-indicative form. So the second moment of receiving a vow. So this would be an example of not having a base and non-impeding.
다들 도드베 주주디 단다 도드베 주주라 넘버지마에 수세 수마레 신께 시에서 다디 콩로디 시기요래 콩디 로코레야 저로 고래이세 고래야 그러면 웬직시이데 과배 공방에 와도와 다 공대제도 대세진나는 대세샤스 디니레스 다디 슝디 수셰레 수 넘버 제워데다 장사 수라야와 제셰레 탐제 요마베 슝기 넘버 제월레 중화시 렉자 중화시체 렉자체 최제제 주소스 아니 le rishin juma chimbo shini rigje du chö geje du sos ngombolas we number shini ene sugu geje du wa she dini shungge chö geje ge sugle number rigje ma ba khone du wa chimbe chir do de we shungdi shini tenju khona yimba du ba temba shindu number rigje ma yimba ne sug kyang ma yin sem kyang ma yin la se khona shi son sos number jema so de suwe mare se mare sin she sha da thonda do do de de da
Then we go on to look at the quote from this Korean master. So I'll just read it out. This assertion of Saturn triggers is mentioned also in the Korean master Wang Chuk's commentary on Unraveling the Intention Sutra, where he writes, with regards to the 8 types of material form, in the Saravastrita traditions, it is asserted that of the 8 aspects of form, the 4 great elements are subsumed into tactile objects, while the 4, such as blue and so on, are subsumed into the class of visible forms. And their text asserts mental form that consists only of non-indicative form. In contrast, Sautantrika texts state, just as in the treatise establishing reality, that non-indicative form is neither material form nor mind at all. So this again refers to this difference between the views that the Sutra school holds that non-indicative form is in fact a type of form, whereas the greater Chidramavadi Zugmarero Sorry, the Sutra school states that this is not form, whereas the Great Exposition school says this non-indicative form is in fact a type of form.
Dombala sim chagyo domba di tanda chirama domba suk chagoro sim damba ke domba di ne sumare domba sim la yinda di namare je mai ba suksa de da hyong du mares jedan de sim damba la do sim damba ni yang da balam bale chime domba tha simjung simba res jedan simjung simba dan the samen chiri bole chebe jedan jedan domba se de ne simba 스로버지 심중 sem바당 제 사병 소리를 지그래서 속진이와 미드웨지 속진이와 말해서 저 미드웨 저 로베이니 고랑 그 흉지 나라던데 셰샤서 디에야데 심담베 로베이니 근데 셰샤서 로베이니 근데 셰르스나 개데 sem바콘을 루지레스 교와당서 심 넘버 이와 타당 심 메바타 나 심바테다 메나 dom바당 도마마임바니 치다 유제나 심베 케바 팔아 좀보다 디셔를 사변도 dom바던 dom바 많이 받쳐도 시에 종스다 난다 심담베 룰라 디 dom바디다 수마레스 가서나 dom바라 수기오 마레 dom바디 셈브레 심심종레스 저는 야메나 디 파자잉고레스 인자 네 넘버 좀 많이 배숙해야 되다 dom바디 수켈렌 치도 마레스 어디 시고로
So again, then looking at the mind-only school view, they also don't state that this is non-indicative form is a type of form, because what they say is it doesn't fit the definition of form, and this is clear when we go through what's written in the text. For the mind-only school, however, the vows received through the rite are accepted either as the mental factor of intention or its seed in the form of an imprint. They do not assert it to be actual physical form. This is explained in Vasubandhu's treatises on establishing karma. If intention alone were physical karma, then when intention is not present for those who have distracted mind or dwell in mindless states, how would either vows or negative commitments come to exist? Both vows and negative commitments exist because they are the propensity or latent potential of a specific instance of karma remaining undestroyed. So again, this is why they state that this is not form, because it doesn't fit with their definition of form, or their view of what this non-indicative form is.
Da umawe lola umawe lola pande dawa thakwa de number je maimbe su se le kelen chi gore su de tomba de su kelen chi go yin da jong yo marta aloben dawa thakwa ge uma ju be ran de na la umawe lola number je maimbe su de su re so gore da de jumjen de ne pande dawa thakwa dan de chu ji ji su re se de gara sna ran de na la khare sna kanshi chu ji ji to be su yi ji se su 숙세 최기지도 배 숙세데 이기 넘버 쉐베 송을 쳐와시 요레스 최기지 숙세데 이기 남식이 유디 요송이 요레스 빼나 밀람나 요와 밀람나 수기와 이기 쉐월라 밀람지 달랑 밀람데 달랑다 강발라서 나와데 이기 이실 나와에 숙지레스 제단데 요레스 세와 나와 다부 군대베 숙남세 최기지기 숙수 송신서 신뢰면 디니기 대회 da bande dawa thakwe zebe rabje phungphung rabje de number je mai ba khan she na se number je mai ba sukse de khande je la na su khan chö gi je de ju ba ten de me je thokba me de me thome de da de sen da yi je number she wa zan ji she ba cha de tomba dan tomba mai ba da phame de ge wa da mi ge ba yun ji ngo khan yin ba de number je mai ba she number je mai ba su tomba dan do me chö gi je su sung shin chö gi je su shin sum yang su ge chen yi ba 숙신이와 시바 나와서다 최지직 숙디 숙신이 상황에서 러빙이 살로면 반대 다와토고 우마벨로라 동바데 숙레다 다디 다도 수수 켜와디 야고 도송하데
However, when you look at the middle way school's view, then this non-indicative form does in fact fit the definition of form and is said to be form. And this is represented here by the quote from Chandrakirti, which says, form that belongs to the class of mental objects that is an object perceived by the mental consciousness. Such form does exist in a dream. So it's referring here to this type of form that would appear in a dream, like we have a house or a car, or in this case it says an ox that would appear in the dream. That is said to be a type of form, a mental object form. So thus, he states that imagined forms such as a dream, horse, or oxen, which appear vividly to the mental consciousness, are mental object forms. Moreover, it is said in the treatises of the five aggregates, a work widely attributed in the same manner.
In the dream, horse that is loud.
So, okay, sorry, not in the dream, such as a dream horse, not a horse appearing in the dream. So it's a dream horse, not it's a horse appearing in a dream. Or a dream house, or a dream car, or something like that. So then the treatise on the five aggregates, a work widely attributed in the same manner. What is non-indicative form? It is any form that is a mental object, which is undemonstrable or non-obstructive, or I think I said non-impeding, and known by mental consciousness alone. Thus, vows, negative commitments, and interim precepts, which are by their very nature part of the continuum of virtuous or non-virtuous karma, are non-indicative forms. So for this quote by Chandrakirti in this view says that according to the middle way school, these mental object forms fit, or this non-indicative form, fits the definition of form.
Shawa Kevin Chigdwa, Umatin Yuwage, Tomasu Kellen Chigdwa, Yusewushu Chazon Wadire, Chigdire.
So this is basically what we've been going over, is whether the various tenon systems actually hold these vows to be form or not. So just to go over it briefly, the Great Exposition School says that yes, these vows are non-indicative form. The Sutra School and the Mind Only School state no, that they're not form. And the Middle Way School says yes as well, that these vows are non-indicative form. Any questions?
Yeah.
So how is I think it's conceptual generic image. But anyway, okay. So how I would just say, how is this conception of a generic image differ from like a visualization of a skeleton? Yeah. Okay. So how is a generic image different from like an image of a skeleton? So the Tanji di takpare, right? You know, the Kenru Gomla di Zugre, right? So the ni Tanji dan di Kenru di Kepakari.
Okay. Tenji di ini suk mayin shi di suk tawish nande, suk tawish nande. Nawa korande, tobe nawa di. Suk mayin shi di suk tawish. Ta tangi sashi kinru le chawa di tingi zing korana la sungune jing yor korana. Tenji di madewe kone sungu si yor da. Sungu si yor da. Tangi di sungu si yor mara da. Suk mayin ki suk tawish nande yor. Tangi sashi kinru chawa di sungune di tadirwa suk chuk ta yor da dila suki nawa tongme shiwe nawa joro di ko ta bena sashi kingru da mare dile sashi kingru ki chawa naan jan yogi tingi zing di ngola ya ta chik tongme shiwa re ta di tingi zing di tongme shiwa chik
tongme
ko jokchik lola chawa yore generally tunji di tokbe shaga yore sashi kingru di tongme ki shaga yore chawa chik tir tang thangbo chawa di shada wadi 조직 로를 쳐와요.
So when we look at a generic image, it can be something that is like appears, that's not form, that appears like form, appears to be like form. So it's not actual form itself. Whereas when you're talking about something like this vision of a skeleton or then it's an actual form that's directly perceived. But you could understand it in terms of, you know, the difference between perceiving an actual form, like not only in the concentration but in other states, is that it's non-conceptual, whereas a generic image is a conceptual experience. So one is conceptual, one is non-conceptual.
Chikde tunji nawa di tokpe nawa di gyodwa yo mare ko takwarwa tangi sashi gyuru chabda gyuru di gyodwa yor ko gyodwa.
And then in terms of the object, there's a difference as well. So in terms of the object of a conceptual mind, this object is not momentarily changing. Whereas the object of, like the skeleton, for example, is momentarily changing. That's said to be momentarily changing. So that's the difference in the object as well. One is permanent and one is not.
Tadi sashi kingru khona sugre lagayo marda ya. Tinde tingi zi dingo la sugji yor kingru de ta sugmarwa da. Kingru sugre lamna da ding kingru de sugmarwa. Kingru khona tingi zi ki pa tru sharwa, tru shi chik dene pa tru ra da khonda. Ko pa tingi zi ki top re, tingi zi ki top. 예전 예된 요지로 고 파 식도로 파주 수식 찍디 갓 동다서야 동다디 갓서야 사실 그 파캡 수드인데 돼요라고 띵이징 제장도 된데 장고 찍디 니 숨시가 도든 요거
팅넥징기제
띵이징이 됐다
팅넥진디 zu그래
띵이징 거나 셔버와 띵이징 제가 최기적 수사는 이식이 되고 최기적 수사 윤제 되다
so the kenro zugmara
Kiru hona suri shagyo amar. Kiru su mare la san.
Zug mare, dinik zug kar.
Tushi chik zeje yoras dele yes.
Emanated.
Dingi ta bejen di simlang ngowa shala yowe chaje yora yowa. Ganda su lungi chaje yora. Tinde mendras tingdonge. Ye pena. Tadi jaji jayi me hamoda. Pena dingi zing gomde ra. Dingi zing gomyonde ni ta namdo sang pharu lukchen lung sama zu dyora. 이 뒤뒤 롱디 누가 전부 심 차로 거라. 다 요외 차데. 다디 단당 아주 롱 우르 라이 롱디 마르다. 요외 차를 롱다 내외 차를 심세하게 딕 롱디 샤고라. 언디 안다 파진 대발라 딜 디케지 시게 와마라. 나단데 계지 셰여디. 이제 롱디게 아니 숑버 교제 아니 직사시 기를 캡도야다. 매차도야다. 슈차도야도. 다딩아 단데나 기제하고 쉐요를 퍼진 대과 되나라 기제된데 세우 쉐요 말다
So the long di zogre.
룽디 소로 하시다 룽디게 네 주시 체제 네 긴루죠 매차로요 추차로요 진디데 다딩에 슝쿵이요 말다 나랑 섬주르다 양에 섬주르스 예 섬주르스 뭐네 이면 하먹었어
Okay. So when we look at the skeletons that appear, right? These themselves are not form. It's the emanation from the concentration that itself is the form. So for example, this based on this concentration. Now the concentration itself is the mind. But based on that, you can emanate 100, which can become 1,000, then back to 100, back to 1, and you can emanate whatever numbers you want. So this emanated is substance. There's like an emanated substance there, which is said to be the form. However, it's more clear if you look at it from tantric point of view, in terms of Tantra, when we talk about the wind that's connected with the subtle, there's the wind in the mind, right? This wind is said to be form, and from this wind. So if you meditate your breath until the concentration and then the wind all settles, and this is not like the gross wind we hear out or we feel when it blows. It's much more subtle than that. But then when the mind is very settled, from this wind can emanate fire and the skeletons and so forth. So this wind is what's said to be the form. But this is just my thinking. I don't know if it's actually right or not, but this is what I think.
안다 띵이띵 또 매바야 당 추주야도 디레 팅도다 룽디게 또 룽라 간도치도디 아니 베제 나게 중얼라 룽라 간도치도 아니 치 룽라 간도치도야 용거라 나게 데라 간도치면은 치라 간도치도 말하다 간노라.
So when these things are emanated through the concentration like fire and so forth, then this is based on this wind. Right? But of course you have to understand and control your internal wind before you can control any external aspects.
단단한저 먼저 학원들 하는 직제다 그래서 탈라 매도와 어디 되게 매디 야 이식 매디 전부 차네 아니 칠로 된데 요지래 되라고 디나라 데려와다 인기제나와 데려와.
So for example, an example of this is if you meditate on like a wrathful deity such as Yamantaka, and then there's a lot of fire and so forth, and it's part of the visualization or the visualization, let's say. And then this would be an example of this emanation from this concentration of this fire.
샘 참어져라 샘 참어게 정보 롱져라 디다 아니메 디다 디네 딘다 조드 내용고여다 두시 대체제 아니 이식이 메시아도 용되게요 심지어 단단 디 메드도 당다 먼저 매바야 매드 말하다디 직제다 그 탈레 요 매드 이식이 메시아들.
So this is emanated from the subtle mind and wind. That's how this fire is produced. Of course, it's not like real fire, like you won't set the place where you are on fire. It's not actual, what would say, real fire, but it's this developed on the basis of the subtle mind and this wind. This fire is emanated, so it's like the fire. It's a object of the mental consciousness. Oh, sorry, it's fire of the mental consciousness, you could say.
Oh yeah, that is how. You have a question?
Yes.
What question?
Vowels, they're called non-obstructive, non-impeding. But surely vowels would have the way they impede is that they stop
do anything? Like, for example, the vow of non-killing impedes you from killing. The vow of not to steal impedes you from stealing. So is that not a form of impeding?
Okay, so the vows are said to be non-impeding or non-obstructing form. Yet the vows stop you from doing certain actions like stealing or killing. So in this way, they impede you from killing or impede you from stealing or obstruct you from killing or obstruct you from stealing. So isn't this impeding? So the 남자 election members open the tombadeiro. The zegi gagi mare togi mare ro. Togme mizu. Yinang konzo togyo kanyan sena di nga sokcho machegire ro. Sokcho gagire sokcho togire ro. So di kandi di tog yobe 연텐 요래 so then 가르치니 togmila.
그래 통밀래디 단도지랑래 다다래 그nga 소주 지기 메스 라브데당 소주 제원이 소주 제나 소주 마제워디 가루라 디 단다 토제 도메스야데 데레 고 수제 찌기 코설라 찌대도만도 데레미시 그 찌파주 dim마디 게제도 마레스 비자제 마게 데나 다메도 왜 셰라다 당지 토제 차로라 디 마레 단데 토제서야데 코데세 사제들 코데메도 가더라
So you're right, yes, that these vows do impede you from stealing or killing or so forth. But what we're talking about in this sense, when it says non-impeding, it's physical non-impeding. So the explanation is that this impeding means that two objects cannot sit in the same physical space. That's the meaning of impeding in this context. So in a sense, you're right. Yes, vows do impede non-virtuous activities such as killing and stealing and so forth. However, impeding in this context means physical impeding in that two physical objects cannot occupy the same space. So yeah, this word impede or togche in Tibetan can be used in many different contexts, but in this context it's like literally physically impeding like that. Oh, people can't see. I'm banging two books together.
This question no there. Okay. So let's stop here now. And next, you want to share with the lost.
Okay, so then the next one is cause. So we'll read that.
Look, ane da gomja de da tanda del ukjung jabje. Ane ukjung chaiwe jila weo gran shin de zo kare do. De se ta tumna da ya wo yores. Dange tujun ukjung gomangbo jabla gdo da jabwe na thare de phen wo yores.
So with the meditation, do the breathing meditation, and in this breathing meditation you can also take it to try and understand how is the breath, like what's the nature of the breath or what's the essence of the breath. So examine the breath and understand that. But it's very good to do this breathing meditation as much as you can.
Kum yago jamna namdo phaka je we diran shi we le na di tande di ta hagu re de la tizu tez madana lamsan le maren namdo be khande ngam leve na la khande yoro.
So if you're actually able to meditate on the breath to the point where your thoughts cease and then this clear light appears, then you can also examine what is the nature of that clear light, understand that. But this is not something that just kind of happens quickly. You have to actually work at it because our tendency is that our thoughts are very busy. So to actually get to this point takes a fair bit of practice.
야 상상을 남도 코로나 간데도 따내와 미디 계절이셔 미디베도 자도 이제 콘도 시작도 콘도 사용도 콘도 내용도 네 콘도데 파마가 어제 콘도 코로나 간데도 따나 호파 예로래 그 심나라 예로래 심나라 예베 차들이야 세릭직리고 남도 파가니 야 왜라시 세릭 차직리고 제당한조 나가 찜바도 찜바 찜바데 나가네 용거리 나가라 파팀로 어데나시 남도 심네 주 용거리 심로 파팀로 데나시 남도 코로나 파마가버시 아지 나라 anxiety도 나 먹어 말라버시 anxiety 요나 그 간데시도 따라 and anxious 코로나 간데도 angry도나 angry 코로나 간데도 타지면 코로나 간데도 코로나게 단도다 emotion 문에 요나 빼야고 그래 emotion인데 요나 된다거든 아니 emotion 코로나 파마가버시 그 간데도 따나 예로 봐 가와 예로 그래 심리 예로 심 예배 차들 세릭 차질래 그래 디 내가 그게네 왜 그런신디 아니 간데 나와셔단 간데도 디가라 뭐심바 시고이나 아니 뭐네게다 곰기 투하러 오신다 뭐네게 심디 간라다 뭐라고 데스 트나 아니 어디 편도에서 뭐 연구를 해서 때쯤에 동반이 셰리 착진시 착진 스케이션 세모토에 들어와 생모토 세모토는 착진 모토래 내가 당보들 생모마트는 즉 착진 계제 셰시라 대요 말이다 그러다 가래다 착진이나리 도지이나리 가리나면나 생모마트는 살다 생모토야라 곰자 스스로 곰마잖아 요아요 말이다
So then it's also good to sometimes take a look at your thoughts as well. You can examine the thoughts from time to time. So maybe you have this thought of like anger and you think, oh, this person said that and then this is making me angry and this kind of thoughts are arising. But if you actually look, examine and understand, well, what is this anger? And then at some point, if through this examination, the anger can actually dissolve, and then you can be again left with this clear light aspect of the mind. So it would be the example of this is like when clouds arise in the sky and then dissolve back into the sky. It's the same like that, but it's not thinking, oh, to cut it, like I've got to cut this anger, or I've got to cut this anxiety, or I've got to stop this anxiousness, not like that, merely observing it and examining it. And the same with other emotional states such as attachment and so forth. Really examine how do they exist and, how, see how they are, like what is the nature of these things. And then through this, when we see how these thoughts arise in the mind and dissolve into the mind and so forth, then we can start to understand how the mind works, like what's the essence of the mind or the nature of the mind and so forth. And to do other meditations, like certain meditations on emptiness, like people talk about doing Mahamudra meditation or Dzogchen meditation and so forth, but without understanding this, how the essence of the mind is. First, you need to do this meditation, or you need to do this meditation, a lot of meditation practice to understand this. Otherwise, it's difficult to understand other aspects of like Mahamudra and Dzogchen. Okay, so we'll stop here.
Raga nanda jena juparasho
Tetsun lame kutse ratenchi Namka chun le chochu ge padang Lo sang tempe jo me sasumgi Jowe mun sao tak tu ne gyuchik Idam guru ratna mandala kanniryatayami. Due to the merit of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha, and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish but increase more and more. Whatever slight positive potential I may have created, by paying homage, offering, and acknowledging my faults, rejoicing and requesting that the Buddhas stay and teach, I now dedicate all this for full awakening. I dedicate all these roots of virtue with the dedication praised as the best, by the victorious ones thus gone of the 3 times, so that I might perform the noble Bodhisattva's deeds. May the King of Dharma Tsongkhapa's way of Dharma practice flourish. May the omens of obstacles be pacified, and all the conducive circumstances be complete. the wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, to the incomparably kind Tenzin Gyatso I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. Saviour of the snowland teachings and transmigratory beings, who makes extremely clear the path that is unification of emptiness and compassion, to the lotus holder Tenzin Gyatso I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. You who uphold the subduer's moral way, who serve as the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjanath's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplish magnificent prayers honoring the three jewels, Saviour of myself and others, your disciples, please, please live long. By relying on the two accumulations of myself and others in the three times, may the teachings of the conqueror Losang Dragpa blaze for a long time.